Good day everyone, welcome to our course on ethics. The subject code is Philo031. Ethics is a branch of the more general field of philosophy. Now I'm sure this is not the first time you've heard of the word philosophy. For this lecture video, we will focus first on the meaning of philosophy as an academic discipline. So this is very important before we dwell into the main content of our course, which is ethics. So I will introduce to you the different definitions and origins of philosophy. Now I'm sure this is not the first time that you may have heard of the word philosophy. In the past, you may have already used this word to mean your certain perspective about life or your outlook about life. But let us try to understand what philosophy really is. Now, in the study of philosophy, we have two traditional definitions of the word, and later I will present to you another definition which is a more modern one. So the first definition is the etymological definition of philosophy. What do we mean by etymology? Etymology is the study of the origin of a word. So when we try to define a word in this way, we're trying to trace the root words of a particular word. Now, the word philosophy, it comes from the Greek word philia sophia, and in ancient times it was the ancient Greek philosopher and mathematician Pythagoras who first coined this word. Now, he called himself a philosophos, which in Greek means lover of wisdom. Now, this word comes from two Greek words. First, philia, which means brotherly love, and sometimes this is translated as friendship. And then second, Sophia, which means wisdom. Now, literally, therefore, or etymologically, philosophy means the love of wisdom. But why did Pythagoras use such words? Why love and wisdom? What does it mean to be a lover of wisdom? So usually when we say love, it's basically a feeling of admiration towards something or someone. It is also important to take note that for the ancient Greeks, there are different forms of love. So the ancient Greeks tried to distinguish different kinds or types of love. For example, we have eros, which means erotic or sexual love. We also have agape, which is unconditional love. We also have storge, which is the love between parents and their children. And then we have philia, which is brotherly love, or again, friendship. And when we say wisdom, usually we understand it as a kind of knowledge which is applied into practice, the correct application of knowledge. But let us understand deeper what a lover of wisdom really is, or what a philosopher really is, by looking into the second definition of philosophy. This is what we call the real definition. Now, according to this definition, philosophy is the science of the first and ultimate principles, reasons, or causes of all things using human reason alone. Now let us analyze this definition. First, philosophy is a science. Now usually when we say science, what comes to our minds are the modern empirical sciences like chemistry, biology, or physics. But actually, science in general means a system or a body of knowledge. So philosophy is a system or a body of knowledge, just as biology, physics, or chemistry are systems or bodies of knowledge. But what is the specific subject matter of philosophy? According to this definition, philosophy studies the first and ultimate principles, reasons, or causes of all things. What do we mean by this? By first and ultimate principles, we mean the origin and the end goal or the purpose of things. Philosophy therefore tries to answer or tries to explain how did things first begin to exist and what is the goal of the existence of things. In other words, it tries to explain and understand the why of things, of all things that exist. Now, in trying to answer that, philosophy uses only human reason, that is, the capacity of the human mind to think and argue. Now, this is what makes philosophy distinct from the other sciences or from the other fields. Philosophy tries to get into the fundamental questions about everything that exists. As it is said here, all things. Now, only philosophy tries to answer the why of things. Now, for example, doing mathematics is one thing. But when you begin to ask, why is mathematics important? Now, that kind of question is a philosophical one. Again, when you begin to ask the why, then that is an endeavor that philosophy undertakes. And again, in answering these questions, philosophy uses only the power of human reason. So we rely only on our thinking in the study of philosophy. Now, those are the two classical definitions of philosophy. Later, I will provide or I will introduce to you a more modern definition of philosophy. Now, let's go to the origins of philosophy. How did philosophy begin, and in what particular place and time did philosophy start? Now, philosophy started in ancient Greece, particularly in the city of Miletus in Ionia around 600 BCE. Now, that is actually more than 2,500 years ago. So, philosophy has existed for more than 2 millennia. That is how old the tradition of philosophy is. Now, today, this place, Miletus, in the region of Ionia, this is part of the country of Turkey. So, if we look at the world map, somewhere in Europe, this peninsula here is Greece today, while this here, today, this is Turkey. But in ancient times, all these places are part of the ancient Greek world. Now, philosophy was born in this city of Miletus, in this region, in this coastal region of Ionia. So, aside from Miletus, we have other ancient Greek cities. For example, we have Athens, which is a very famous one. And in fact, today, Athens remains the capital of Greece. We also have the city of Sparta, where warriors are born and bred. So, again, in Miletus, this is where philosophy was born. So actually, if you watch movies with an ancient Greek setting, you will have a glimpse of the kind of life that the ancient Greeks had. So before going further, let us first consider the many things for which the ancient Greeks were known. So in ancient times, the ancient Greek people were pioneers in many great things. So I have here pictures depicting the life, the culture, and the civilization of the ancient Greeks. So here you see the Acropolis, which literally means city at the top. The Acropolis is found in the city of Athens today, and there are remains here of ancient Greek buildings or structures, one of which is the Parthenon. This is the temple which is sacred to the Olympian gods of Greek mythology. The ancient Greeks were also famous for celebrating the Olympic Games. That is a manifestation of their celebration for life. The ancient Greeks loved life. So here, this is a sculpture of the discobulus, or the disc thrower. So disc throwing is one of the sports in the Olympic Games. So in their entertainment, the ancient Greeks had their form of entertainment in theaters, where they watched dramas and plays written by their famous dramatists. So this here is a painting of the theater of the Greek god Dionysus in Athens. The ancient Greeks were also famous warriors. For example, in the city of Sparta, you have the great general Leonidas, who is famous for defeating the Persian army. The Greeks were also lovers of democracy. In fact, democracy first developed and flourished in ancient Greece, particularly in Athens. So this painting here shows an Athenian politician giving his speech to the Athenian Democratic Assembly. So democratic practices in politics were first done by the ancient Greek people. And this here is the east pediment of the Parthenon. Again, the Parthenon is a temple in the Acropolis, which is sacred to the gods of Mount Olympus. So the east pediment portrays here the birth of Athena, the daughter of the Greek god Zeus. So religion, politics, military power, theaters, the Olympic Games, their architectural works, all these shape and define the civilization of the ancient Greeks. Now, the ancient Greeks were curious about the nature and origin of the world or the universe. So this is particularly clear in their Greek mythology, in their traditional belief system. Now, before philosophy began, the ancient Greeks used myths as means to understand the workings of the universe. Mythology, in a way, helped the ancient Greeks understand how things occur in the natural universe. So you have, for example, the famous ancient Greek poet Homer, who wrote epics of gods and demigods and heroes, popular in Greek mythology. So Greek mythology is like, it is comprised of many stories which shape the traditional belief system of the ancient Greeks. In their mythological beliefs, they have the understanding that the universe is actually operated by the gods. Everything that happens in the universe is a work of the gods. So that is their belief. For example, you have the Greek gods of Mount Olympus. So on Mount Olympus, this is where they believe the principal gods live, Zeus and his brothers. Now, if thunder and lightning occurred, then the ancient Greeks would believe that Zeus must be angry at humans or may have a quarrel with another god on Mount Olympus. They believe that the god Poseidon controls the sea, so they pray to Poseidon whenever they travel by sea. And then Hades is the one who rules the underworld, the afterlife. Now, again, their belief was that nature was controlled by these super-personal forces called the gods, the deities of Greek mythology. Another important ancient Greek poet, aside from Homer, was Hesiod. Now, Hesiod was famous for providing a mythological story about the ancient Greek view of the beginning and structure of the universe. According to Hesiod's story, the universe was created by the Titans. So, the Titans, I assume that you are all familiar with them. You can see stories about them in movies in Hollywood. So, the Titans are themselves the different elements of the universe. The Titans are also the ancestors of the principal gods of Greek mythology. So they're like the forefathers of Zeus and the others. So according to Hesiod's story, at the beginning, there was only the Titan Chaos, which is the primeval chasm and disorder. So the universe or the world did not yet have a specific form. There was only chaos. That's why in English you have this word, chaos. It comes from the name of this Titan, Chaos. Now, from Chaos, Gaia, or Earth, and Tartarus, or the underworld, which is ruled by Hades, were born. Again, they're born from Chaos. From Chaos and Gaia, Uranus, or heaven, was born. And from Uranus and Gaia, Kronos and Rhea were born. Now, Kronos and Rhea became the parents of the Olympian gods. So they're the parents of Zeus, Poseidon, and the rest. So again, this is the ancient Greek mythological view of the universe. This is how they viewed the universe. It is operated, manipulated by the gods, and then that the universe began through the story of the Titans. Now, how is this important in the beginning or the birth of philosophy? Now, the idea of the beginning or the origin of the universe contributed to the rise of philosophy. Since the Greek mind looked for other explanations, the Greek mind started to look for more scientific and rational explanations regarding the origin of the universe, explanations which are no longer mythological, or if you may, superstitious. So the use of reason or science instead of myths gave birth to philosophy. So the Greek mind was very inquisitive. There was a point that the Greeks wanted to know where the universe comes from, but they wanted to know the answer to that not from a mythological point of view, but from a more scientific point of view. Hence, they used reason. Now, the first one to do this, the pioneer in this kind of movement in ancient Greece, was Thales of Miletus. He is famously known as the first philosopher. So Thales was from the city of Miletus. Hence, Miletus is the birthplace of philosophy. Now, what is so remarkable in Thales' ideas? Now, like the poets before him, Thales also searched for answers to questions about the beginning of the universe. But Thales relied on reason instead of myth in looking for those answers. Thales argues that the world or the universe comes from water. For us, it may be a very startling claim. Now, who would believe that the universe or the world comes from water? Now, what is Thales' explanation regarding this? Now, coming from the notes of Aristotle, who is another philosopher who came much later than Thales, we know that Thales theorizes this, that water is the source of the universe, based on his observation that the nutriment of all things is moist. So Thales observed that among the things around him, things that are alive and even things that do not manifest life, things nourish because of moist. And moist is something that comes from water. Therefore, water must be the source of all things. Now, for us, or for many of you, this may be something that's really incredible. We might find it not really convincing. But this was actually a very important scientific breakthrough during the time of Thales. The investigations of Thales provided the first spark for science. Science begins when the human mind seeks to know, as science is the search for knowledge. In other words, science was born the moment philosophy was born. Now, this is why philosophy is very fundamental to all other sciences. In fact, when you study other disciplines, you are also in a certain way also doing philosophy. Okay, because again, philosophy started when the Greeks started to know things from a scientific point of view, and this is also the first sparks of scientific inquiry. Okay, so again, science was born the moment also when philosophy was born. Now, that is the origin of philosophy in terms of history, its historical origins. Now, what particular kind of experience accounts for the birth of philosophy? Now, the Athenian philosopher Socrates, as reported by his student Plato, says that wonder is the feeling of a philosopher, and philosophy begins in wonder. Now, commenting on this, Aristotle, who was a student of Plato, he says, "For men were first led to study philosophy, as indeed they are today, by wonder. Now he who is perplexed and wonders believes himself to be ignorant. They took to philosophy to escape ignorance." So take note, both Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, they agree that wonder is the beginning of philosophy. And actually, when people begin to wonder, according to Aristotle, they took to the study of philosophy in order to escape their ignorance. So the mind is naturally inquisitive. We human beings, we have the natural desire to know the truth, to know the nature of things. And it is on account of this fundamental curiosity or this wonder that philosophy is born. But what specifically defines philosophic wonder? It is the experience of being perplexed or confused about life's biggest questions. And again, only philosophy asks the very fundamental questions in life, biggest questions in life. Now, you may, for example, ask yourself, what is the meaning and the purpose of my life? Okay, so that is already a very philosophical question. Now, there are certain moments in your life when you find yourself perplexed or confused about these things. And then you begin to ask questions. And when you begin to ask questions, then you begin to think. Wonder means thinking, and thinking is the business of philosophy. Okay? So this is the particular kind of experience or feeling that gives rise to philosophy? Wonder. Okay? Again, you might have asked yourself, or already, maybe in the past, certain questions that you find very perplexing, or questions that confuse you. Questions like, what is the meaning of life? I think every human being asks that question somewhere in his life, or at some point in his life. Now, what is the meaning of life if we people suffer? Why do people suffer? Why does evil exist in the world? And sometimes, because of the existence of suffering and evil, we then begin to ask, does God really exist? If he exists, why does he allow suffering? What is the truth? What is real? How do I know that things are real? How do I know that I am real? What happens when I die? Do I have a soul that will continue to exist after I die? Why do people have to live in society? Why is there a society? What is education for? And lastly, this is a very basic human experience. Love. What is love, and do we need it? So these questions, again, only philosophy can at least try to answer them. The other sciences, they don't really deal with these types of questions. Now, right now, you might be asking yourselves these questions, or maybe you might be asking yourselves already different kinds of questions. Now, this is another thing that makes philosophy different from other sciences. So here, I present to you the other definition of philosophy, which is a modern one, coming from the 20th century German philosopher Karl Jaspers. Jaspers defines philosophy this way: it is a discipline in which questions are more important than answers, because answers themselves will in turn become questions. So in philosophy, it's not really a problem if we don't find an answer to our questions right away. In fact, in this study, questions are more important than answers. What is important here is that we learn how to raise questions, we learn how to ask questions. Because again, asking questions means that you are thinking. Now, also, it is on account of this that even philosophers themselves do not have a single agreed definition of philosophy. Because philosophy is really not just a subject that you can learn inside a classroom. Philosophy prepares you for life itself. So, as we end this lecture video, this first lecture video for our course, this may be a challenge that you may challenge yourself all throughout this course, all throughout your life. Dare to know.